Welcome to Born to Lose, Episode 1. This week we've got Ryan on Kirik, son of Yawgmoth, using his life to cast a bunch of scary spells and make his opponents suffer with him. Graham is trying his new Ob Nixilis Captive Kingpin deck, dealing a bunch of 1 damage pings and hoping to combo off. Maya is playing Thalia and the Gitrog monster, a landfall deck with a ton of tokens and a ton of value, giving the good old-fashioned beatdown. And we've got Pat on Meren, clan of Toth, focusing on sacrificing his creatures and using his graveyard to its full potential. Pat wins the die roll and starts us off. Pat starts us off by playing a swamp and passes the turn. Ryan plays a swamp and casts Sensei's Divining Top. He activates the top, drawing a card and putting the top on top. He passes the turn. Graham plays a Scolding Tarn and cracks it to find a mountain. He passes the turn while he goes to search. Maya plays a swamp and casts Soul Stair Expedition, then passes the turn. Pat plays an Ancient Tomb. He takes 2 damage and casts Phyrexian Arena, then passes the turn. Ryan plays a swamp, then casts Night's Whisper, losing 2 life and drawing 2 cards, then passes the turn. Graham plays Exotic Orchard. He casts and cracks a Jewel Lotus to cast his commander. He casts Imperial Seal, losing 2 life, and passes the turn as he goes to search for a card to put on top. Maya plays a Force and puts a counter on her Expedition, then passes the turn. Pat loses 1 life from Arena and draws an extra card. He plays a Slitherborn Pathway, loses 2 life from Ancient Tomb, and casts his commander. He passes the turn. Ryan plays Nykthos, Shrine to Nyx, and casts Liliana of the Veil. He minuses Liliana, targeting Graham. Graham sacrifices Ob, and then Ryan passes the turn. Graham plays Shivan Gorge. He casts Demonic Tutor and searches for a card. He casts Walking Ballista, where X is 0. It enters the battlefield and dies. He passes the turn. Maya plays a Plains and puts another counter on her Expedition. She then casts Ramunap Excavator and passes the turn. Pat loses 1 life from Arena and draws an extra card. He plays a Misty Rainforest, then moves to combat, killing Liliana. He cracks his Misty for an Overgrown Tomb and passes the turn. Ryan plays a Bojuka Bog, exiling Graham's graveyard. He recasts his top. He casts Bloodchief Ascension. He activates his top, rearranging the top 3 cards of his library. He activates top again, drawing a card and putting the top on top. He passes the turn. Graham plays a Shadowborn Ridge. He casts Mox Opal and passes the turn. Maya plays a Forest and puts a counter on her Expedition. She casts her commander, then plays a Plains, passing the turn. Pat loses 1 life from Arena and draws an extra card. He plays a tapped Command Beacon. He casts Reclamation Sage. It enters the battlefield tapped and destroys Ryan's Ascension. He attacks Graham with Meren and passes the turn. Ryan recasts his top. He casts a Zolaport Cutthroat, which enters the battlefield tapped. He activates both modes of his top, rearranging the top of his library, then drawing a card and putting the top on top. He passes the turn. Graham casts Cloudstone Curio and passes the turn. Maya starts her turn and moves right to combat. She attacks Pat, sacrificing a Forest and drawing a card. In her second main phase, she plays the Forest from her graveyard, plays an additional Forest, then casts Doubling Season and passes the turn. Pat loses 1 life from Arena and draws an extra card. He plays a tapped Cabal Coffers. He moves to combat, attacking Maya with Meren, and then passes the turn. Ryan taps out and pays 6 life to cast his commander. It enters tapped, and he passes the turn. Graham casts Jessica's Will, targeting Pat. He adds 7 red mana to his pool. He uses 5 of the red mana and taps a land to cast his commander. Ob enters the battlefield tapped, and he passes the turn. Maya casts Worldly Tutor and searches for a card to put on top. She moves to combat and attacks Graham, sacrificing a Forest and drawing a card. She replays the Forest from her graveyard. She casts Rampaging Balefs and then plays a Plains. She creates 2 beasts and goes to get her tokens while she passes the turn. Pat loses 1 life from Arena and draws an extra card. He casts Feed the Swarm, destroying Maya's expedition, and loses 1 life. He plays a forest, then casts Toxic Deluge, paying 6 life to wrath the board. Every creature dies, and Ryan's opponents lose 2 life from Soloport Cutthroat. Pat gets an experience counter and passes the turn. Ryan recasts his top and activates both modes, rearranging the top of his library, then drawing a card and putting the top on top. He casts Mana Crypt and Jet Medallion, then passes the turn. Graham says he needs to draw a land and passes the turn. Maya recasts her commander. She then plays a Orzhov Basilica, returning a land to hand. She then plays a Verdict Catacombs and passes the turn. Pat loses 1 life from Arena and draws an extra card. He plays a Swamp and casts a Soul Ring. He then recasts his commander and then casts a Deathrite Shaman. They both enter the battlefield tapped, and he passes the turn. Ryan loses his Crypt Roll and loses 3 life. He recasts his commander, paying 4 life, who enters tapped, and Ryan passes the turn. Graham casts Skirt Prospector and Karadek Parasite. They both enter tapped, and he passes the turn. Maya draws for turn and loses 1 life to Graham's Parasite. She moves to combat, attacking Ryan, sacrificing a forest and drawing a card. She casts Crucible of Worlds. She replays the forest from her graveyard and a plains, then passes the turn. Pat draws 2 cards and loses 3 life from Arena and Graham's Parasite. He casts Demon's Disciple, and everyone sacrifices a creature. He moves to combat, and Maya casts Swords to Plowshares on Meren. Pat gains 3 life and moves to second main phase. He cracks Command Beacon to returning Meren to hand. He then casts her and passes his turn. Ryan loses his Crypt Roll and loses 3 life. He recasts top and then activates its ability, rearranging the top 3 cards of his library. He casts Read the Bones, scrying 2, drawing 2, and losing 2 life. He plays a Swamp for turn. He casts Dark Ritual and follows it up with a Bolas's Citadel. He starts digging with Citadel. He casts Blood Artist, paying 2 life. He casts Font of Agonies, paying 1 life. And he casts Swiftfoot Boots, paying 2 life. He activates top, drawing a card and putting the top on top, then pays 1 life to recast the top. He continues digging and pays 2 life for Mindstone and 1 life for Vampiric Tutor. After tutoring, he activates the top to draw the card he tutors for, puts the top on top, and passes the turn. Graham casts a Cabal Ritual and follows it up with an Ad Nauseam and starts digging. He reveals a Mana Confluence, Ragavan, Ren's Resolve, Imp's Mischief, Mana Vault, Urza Saga, Restless Handling, Vampiric Tutor, Dothi Voidwalker, Faithless Looting, Mox Amber, Dockside Extortionist, Reckless Impulse, Bolt Bend, losing a total of 20 life, and decides to stop there. He plays a Mana Confluence and then casts a Mox Amber. He counts his opponent's artifacts and enchantments and then casts Dockside Extortionist, creating 10 treasure. He casts a Mana Vault. He recasts his commander. He casts All Will Be One, and in response, Pat casts Deadly Rowlet for free, targeting Ob. Graham responds by casting Deflecting Swat for free and changes the target to Meren. Meren gets exiled, and All Will Be One resolves. Graham passes the turn. On Maya's draw step, Graham's Parasite triggers and Maya loses 1 life. This triggers Ob Nixilis and puts 1 counter on him. The counter triggers All Will Be One and pings Maya for 1. This creates an infinite loop of Ob gaining 1 counter and All Will Be One dealing 1 damage until everyone is dead. Graham wins. Thanks for watching our first episode. I'm new to this and hoping to improve. I would love to hear your feedback below. See you in the next one.